Hey, are you struggling to play difficult passages, pieces, or covers on the piano? Are you trying to level up your technique and how fast you can play, and you're working on a harder piece than you usually do? Are you trying to play Animenz Unravel? Then do I have the video for you. Hey, what is up everybody? Welcome back to WattKeys, and today we are starting a new mini-series, two-part mini-series on how to practice, perfect, and perform hard pieces and hard passages. What to do when you get stuck, what to do to get faster at playing, and all of the above. And I'm going to be giving you guys some tips, tricks, and strategies on how to practice these passages. This video is part 1, which means there's going to be a part 2. So if this is helpful and beneficial to you, consider subscribing and hitting that like button to let me know that I should make part 2 sooner, because it might take a few months if you don't. So part 1, we're going to be talking about general approaches and strategies overall for approaching these passages, for these pieces, but we're also going to be talking about how to practice runs specifically. In part 2, we're going to be covering jumps and chords and stuff like that, how to bring stuff up to tempo, and a bit of performance mentality, right? Not full in-depth how to perform stuff, but like a little bit of that, specifically when it comes to these passages. This is nothing new, right? If you've been around the block, if you've been playing the piano for a while, you've had private lessons, whatever, right? You've likely come across these tips and tricks before. I'm not the only pianist who knows how to do these things. And there are other really great YouTube videos out there that I've linked below that you should go check out after you watch this video. But if you don't know these tips and tricks and you're kind of stuck on a passage right now, then your boy's gonna help you out. So let's get it. Alright, starting with general strategies. Tip number 1, strat number 1, the most important one, practice slowly. Alright, jokes aside, what's the point of playing slowly? You probably all heard the adage,
if you can play something slowly, you can play it quickly.
But what does it even mean? The point of slow practice is to drill into your fingers the muscle memory needed to be able to play quickly. You cannot play fast and think about each and every single note that you're playing. That's just unrealistic. Slow practice makes it such that you're able to articulate and get the right muscle memory into your fingers, because if you jump and miss and you keep practicing to miss over and over again, that's what's going to get into your head, and that's what's going to trip you up when you get on stage, when you go and perform, when you record. So slow practice gets the right muscle memory, the right articulation, and the right feel into your fingers. The whole name of the game, right, when it comes to slow practice is control. Your fingers cannot for a single moment be operating under its own willpower. Each and every note has to be intentional, and that's how you get that into your head. That's how it starts to sink into your fingers. You're getting used to patterns, you're getting used to jumps, you're getting used to the control that's needed, the strength that's needed, and the spacings in order to play what you need to play or what you want to play. So, how do you practice slowly? Tip 1.5, practice with a metronome. Well, this is my phone, but my phone has a metronome app, right? Practice with a metronome. What's the point of practicing with a metronome? Practicing with a metronome makes sure that you're playing evenly at a consistent tempo the entire time, the entire way through the piece. It'll teach you how to count, it'll teach you how to play properly, rhythmically, and it will make it so that the entire piece is able to be scaled up at the same tempo. And on top of that, when you're performing or when you're playing in general, even if you count in your head, there's a lot of times that it's just not accurate, right? You get caught up in the emotion of the piece, and then you lose count, and you're like, wait, hold on, where was I? Or if you're focused entirely on counting, you're not focusing on some other important things like, where am I jumping? What is the next note? What is the fingering? All these things have to come into play, and the metronome really helps out. If you're not a fan of playing with the metronome, I understand, right? Nobody likes playing with metronome. You just want to be free, you want to be able to express the things that you want to express, but the important thing to remember is you're not there yet. You don't know the notes well enough to be able to push and pull the tempo. You don't know the notes well enough to express whatever you want to express. And if you want to know the notes well enough, then I highly suggest and recommend practicing with a metronome, practicing slowly. The question becomes, what is a slow tempo? A slow tempo, by my definition, is a tempo where you can 95% of the time, with full control and full intentionality, play the notes at 100%. What slow is changes as you learn a piece, changes depending on the final tempo of the piece, but slow fundamentally, you should be able to play perfectly, accurately, 95% of the time, while being in total control of your fingers and what they're doing. I say 95% of the time because there's always going to be like 5% of the time where just random freak accidents happen. So I'm cutting you some slack. Or really, I'm cutting myself some slack. Make sure you bottom out the key on each note. Make sure you land on each note perfectly and on top of the note and press down all the way to get that feel. You want to feel the bottom of the key. That's how you drill it into your fingers. And once you've done that for each section a few times, do it a few more times. Repeat. I mean, you've got your 40 hours ahead of you in a day. Like, you might as well make use of it, right? To practice more of these things slowly. But I promise you, if you practice slow now, you'll reap the reward later. It'll pay dividends later. So, practice slow. Tip number 2, strat number 2, practice without pedal. So a lot of people like to play their stuff with lots and lots of pedal because it sounds great. Everything sounds much more resonant, much more warm. But the problem with that is that the pedal obscures what you can hear. If you keep messing up in a spot or something sounds uneven, the pedal can smooth that out. You might not be able to notice it when you're playing, but a lot of other people, when they're listening to you play, can hear it because, I mean, you're sitting right next to the piano, you've got your headphones on and it's coming out straight into your ears, right? It's hard to hear. So, practice without pedal is going to sound disgusting, is going to sound ugly, and is going to not be great, but it will expose each and every single spot where you have an issue when you're practicing slow, when you're practicing fast, and it will tell you exactly where you need to put time and effort towards to fixing, right? Where you're uneven, where you're articulating wrong, where you're phrasing wrong, where you're missing notes. Missing notes is a big one because pedals really glosses over that. So practice without pedal and expose your weaknesses so that you're able to fix them so they don't become big weaknesses later. When you're performing and you have one of these spots and you mess up and you derail, then you'll think back to this video and say, man, I should have practiced without pedal. So don't be that guy, practice without pedal. Of course, I'm not saying don't ever practice with pedal. At some point when you're starting to phrase, when you're starting to add musicality, put the pedal back in. But when you're practicing for technique and making sure you're hitting the right notes, it's far better to do without, to do with, and realize that you're messing up later, right? Again, don't put yourself in a spot where you have to go back and fix it. And the third and final strategy for practicing hard stuff is to memorize the hard parts from the outset. So I don't do this all the time, and you don't have to do this all the time either. But if there's a particularly hard spot, I do go and make an attempt to memorize it before I start working on it. And this is so that I don't have to keep looking for notes on the page, and so that I can devote all my time and attention towards looking at the keys and seeing what my hands are doing and making sure that they're doing what I want them to, right? Obviously, this strategy doesn't apply to you if you play by ear or you play by synesthesia, but if you're playing with sheets, I highly recommend, if there's like a part that's really, really tough, to memorize it first. Try memorizing first at least, so that you have a very conscious understanding of what notes you're supposed to be playing, and so that you can divert more of that time and attention and focus towards the keys and your fingers as opposed to looking at the score. And as a bonus, later when you go and memorize the whole piece, that part will be very well done and you'll know that in and out. And what was one of the hardest parts of the piece becomes one of the most secure parts when you're out performing, because you know that. You know it really well because you've known it since the beginning, right? So take the strategy as you will. Now let's get on to runs. We're gonna have to go to the keyboard for this one. All right, so tip number 4 is the absolute best way to practice runs. And I've been doing this for years, and this is nothing new, but it's practicing with rhythms. So here we have a passage in Chopin's Ballade in G minor, measure 138. So it sounds something like... So what we do with rhythms is we take this run, right? That's very consecutive and very, very straightforward. And we split it into long, short, long, short. So I'm gonna take this separately since the left hand is jumps, which we're gonna talk about next time. But the right hand, I'm gonna take separate from the left and do long, short, long, short. Like that. And then after I'm done practicing like that, I'll switch it to short, long, short, long. So you'll notice that I'm doing the short parts and the long parts, like the ratio is kind of even at this point. But the more you practice, you want to make it so that it's much more shorter and more intentional. So, and you really want to articulate the long notes. Like that. And and vice versa. So what this is doing essentially is teaching your fingers where they need to go. You have to press the key all the way down. You're drilling into your muscle memory these patterns, and by doing both ways, it's almost like you're teaching your fingers how to find the happy medium of playing smoothly and articulately through. That's about the best way I can explain it. Aside from that, it just sometimes works like magic. Show up to your piano teacher's house 15 minutes before the lesson, do this, and your teacher will be like, wow, this is great. So you just drill this every day, low tempo. The second thing we can do with rhythms is do groups of 3. So instead of going long, short, we can go long, short, short, long, short, short. And we can do this when things are written in triplets, when things are written in 6 and stuff like that, like Chopin Ballade in G minor, where there's 6 beats in a measure. So we can go or vice versa. Short, short, long, short, short, long. And we can even emphasize the middle note, although I find that this is less helpful simply because I like to feel where I'm landing, but that could be something that's beneficial for you. So what's important to remember, again, to emphasize, lift the fingers high and get that feeling of pressing all the way down on the key, because you want that in your muscle memory. That's the only way that you're going to be able to do it. On that point, you can also do groups of 4, 5, 6, onwards and upwards, but I've never really had to work past 2. So for example, if we were playing the revolutionary etude and you wanted to work in groups of 4, you're gonna do long, short, 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 long, short, 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 or vice versa, or any combination of. You want to articulate that long note every single time. So yeah, you should definitely practice rhythms, because this is a game changer in a lot of ways. The 5th and final tip or strat for this video is accents, practicing with accents. So you want to articulate each note that's on the beat. And we're playing this without rhythm now. You can do this with both hands as well, together like in this section, but I'm going to start with 1. So it's kind of like that, right? You're on each beat, you add an accent. As you get more and more practice, then you can start putting those accents at more spaced out intervals. So in this case, right, I would do an accent every 3 beats because it's half a measure. Like that. So what is this doing? First, I would do this only after I practice rhythms, right? After practicing the rhythms, it gets me into a space where I can play pretty smoothly and pretty continuously. Adding the accent helps with phrasing and articulating the right notes. So you could practice this way with accents on any of the notes, really. It will teach your fingers how to be articulate and dexterous in the ways that it needs to. But I feel like for me, I do that with rhythms. And then with accents, I make sure that I'm emphasizing the right notes. The downbeat is always going to be more important than the second beat, right? Like, you never play like, very rarely do you play like that, unless the style or the phrasing specifically demands it. So you can keep accents as a tool, even when you climb up in tempo. And all these things, again, teaches your fingers how to be articulate, and now we're beginning to start phrasing a little bit too. And all that comes together to help you play runs better. Evidently, I still need more practice. And that's how you practice runs. Now get to it. Alright, and that wraps up how I generally approach practicing hard stuff, and specifically runs for this video. Part 2 is coming soon, so if this was helpful for you, be sure to hit that like button to let me know so that I'll get on this a little bit quicker before other content. And of course, if you know someone who could benefit from watching this video from some of the things that I talk about, be sure to pass this along to them, because we're all trying to get better together. If you have any questions about anything that I said in this video or any comments, be sure to leave that down below and I'll do my best to respond. Or if you have more tips and tricks, be sure to leave that for the rest of us too, so that we can again get better together. And as usual, this video was brought to you by my music production company, Just Be Records. Links are in the description down below. Hit me up if you need help with mixing or mastering. If you would like a personalized performance review or critique, be sure to check out my Buy Me a Coffee link down below where you can get that. And if you want some bonus behind the scenes sort of content to what I'm doing here, check out my Patreon as well. As always, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, especially if you got value out of this video and it was helpful for you. If you want to see more analyses type videos, be sure to click here. And until next time, peace.